everyone, it's Ollie at Magic Hands Hobbies. Welcome back to another video. This one is to show you the process of me making my HeroQuest stairs. This is for my HeroQuest board. This was based very much so on a HeroQuest stairs that I'd seen previously online, which I think was a 3D element, possibly even from the HeroQuest board that I'm looking to 3D print, so I've very much based it on that. I did do some design work on it just to see how I would do it, and I've layered up a 4 square section of board in such a way that there are 4 squares. So when you look down from above, there are 4 separate squares at different levels to allow heroes to stand on the stairs at the same time. I've then gone in, glued those boards together, and then scratched out some elements to make it look like it's made out of slabs and bricks. Here's some of the heroes for scale, just to show you what I mean. Any of the standard heroes or the standard enemies from the HeroQuest board will fit on this. It all looks pretty good, it all works, and it fits on the standard board that I made. So we're on to decoration now. I haven't gone too much into how to actually physically make this. This is an old advanced HeroQuest door that I had. It was all broken, can't find the base. The door hinge was actually broken as well, so what I've done here is fixed it in position and attached some wires. Got some accessories, little rats, shields, some skulls, and also a piece from a Warhammer Fantasy building that I've never really found a use for. But I thought it looked pretty good. Anyway, so I've primed everything in black with Mod Podge in order to seal the paint, seal the foam. The last thing you want is your paint all disappearing into the foam because it's not been sealed. It also helps protect it, gives it a hard coat and makes it a bit more sturdy. Now, unfortunately, you can see between some of the layers, especially where the skulls were in the little recess, there's some horizontal lines that are sticking out. That's the glue. That's my own fault. I used a hot glue gun and it squeezed out and I didn't wipe it away in time, so it has actually formed a very hard shelf area. Now we can disguise that later, but first of all we're going to move on to the painting. Now I start painting this and then I realised that this is not the same method that I was using to paint the walls of my HeroQuest dungeon, and I want it to match, so I end up stopping here and going back. So I've undercoated the whole thing, but then I realised, oh, I'm actually supposed to paint the some of the stones different and individual. So yeah, so here's me putting on the second highlight, and it's partway through this that I realised that I've made a mistake and it doesn't quite work, because at the moment all of the stones are looking the same, which is not what I want to happen. I need them to look slightly different, have some variation in them. Now what I'm starting to do here is I wanted to emulate some light coming in through the door that would then go down the stairs and work appropriately. But you can see I stopped doing this because I realised I needed to paint the individual stones. So I'm just going around with a few odd colours that are slightly different. So I've got some beige ones here, and then I put some lighter, well, more like a tan I suppose, that first one. Now it's moving on to a lighter version of that tan, just picking out some random bricks or stone, so it looks much better, a bit more variation. So now I've done that and I've put it around all of the sides, even those sides that technically wouldn't be seen. I'm now going to cover it in the Vallejo game wash that I have here. This is the black wash. Really good. I don't want to use the Games Workshop one, it's far too expensive to use over such a large miniature, especially if I'm going to be doing the rest of the board. So I'm going to coat the whole thing in this, which kind of ties everything together and gives it a universal value of colour. So you can see, there you go. Looks quite good. Got variations in the stonework, but somehow that wash has just brought it all back together. Now, so I'm effectively going back a step here. So now I've got to go back and start doing all the dry brushing again. So the idea is I'm putting colour on, in general, all over the board. All over the piece. But I will be trying to specifically focus in the areas where light will be coming in through the door at the top of the stairs. Right, so now I'm going to go back in and start the dry brushing process again, looking for the light that I want to come through the doors. Now, or through the single door. I want the light projecting in straight lines, so you have to try and view this from above and figure out how light is going to interact with all of the vertical edges. There probably is a logical way of working these lines out, but I'm just going to speed through this. As you see, I was experimenting with it. I can't give you a clear-cut answer. Just use your best judgment. At the end of the day, you can take some artistic liberties in this. In fact, the entire hobby that we do, there are lots of liberties that we tend to take. We talk about volumetrics and light and things like that, but ultimately, unless you're going to paint it very, very realistically, you can take a lot of liberties with this. So moving on to additional colours, I worked out a process when doing the physical board of adding particular colours to make the light more ambient and warmer than I have first anticipated, and this is the recipe that I have used. Now I'm working on to highlights. Obviously there is harsh edges, harsh light that comes from light sources. We're not talking about LED lights, we're talking about torches. This is why I try to make it a warm colour rather than a white. Constantly adding the door just to make sure that the projection of the light is going to work. I expect some to filter underneath the bottom edge of the door. That's why I've allowed some to go to the far left of the miniature as we look at it. But otherwise the majority will be coming in at an angle. I'm also adding stuff to the door frame because obviously the light is going to hit the door and the frame, but I'll cover that bit a little bit later. So on the edges that can't typically be seen in the dungeon environment, I'm just adding some additional texture, some dry brushing across the surface in general, not focusing on light, not focusing on the details, just trying to make it look good. These edges typically would be up against a wall, yeah, that's what I've come up with so far. Looks okay, but the light doesn't quite have the edge. You can see I'm trying to just confirm the way the light's falling. I'm leaving a few shadow edges and things like that. The way to actually have done it would have been to look through the door down the stairs, and whatever edges you could see, that would be where the light falls. I suppose that's a good way of looking at it. So now I'm going to start painting in some of the details. Start with the skulls, add some bone white to that. You can obviously paint these however you want. You can put some ambient glow on there. I've done a video with HeroQuest doors where I was mucking about with colours, came out with a couple of different schemes. one of which looks very much like Castle Grayskull from Masters of the Universe. But for this one, I'm trying to go a bit more realistic. So when I say realistic, I don't mean real, but I mean it's got more of a realistic vibe to it, rather than being bright green, purple, blue, things like that. Now I'm a big fan of weathering. That one there is to add verdigris colour, and I decided to try and experiment here, and I'm literally covering the entire thing in this technical paint, and then I'm just going to give it 10-20 seconds to partly dry, and then you get one of these makeup sponges, which is I think for applying eye makeup, eyeshadow, and literally rubbing it across the surface almost as if I'm dry brushing, but the idea is I'm removing paint rather than adding paint from all the exposed faces. And you know what, I think it works. Rather than trying to apply individual areas of the technical paint, this makes things a bit simpler, a bit quicker. Didn't really put much thought into it. I probably could have done it better, but as an experiment, I'm pretty happy with it. I've also used the same technique on some statues, which I will be putting into my HeroQuest board, which are from the same model set for this piece here, which is an old world Warhammer house. this next bit of weathering is dirty down moss. Now I've very little used this so far, or used it very little. I don't 100% know if I'm doing it correct. I don't believe it's got the same process as the dirty down rust, where you can add water to it and it reacts. This one I've added, and it's very flat. I can't get it to produce a physical moss-like effect. I have a feeling it is supposed to be more like algae and wet moss. So what I'm doing is I'm applying it in areas where I think the water would have collected, the area remains damp, and it's forming this algae and moss that you would typically expect to see over rocks and stones that are in a damp environment. I will add some flock and bits of reindeer moss to this later, just to give it a bit more oomph, bring a bit of greenery into it, as if the dungeon has been left unattended. There's no janitor on duty, and yeah, it provides a bit of interest to the overall scale of the dungeon. And I'll be doing this throughout the entire build, but I'll be doing a separate video for that potentially. Right, now this was my secret that I took a risk on when I was painting my HeroQuest board. This wash is a dipping wash. It's a sepia version, almost equivalent of the Agrax Earthshade. But when you put this stuff over bright colours, like this yellow for instance, the light effect that it leaves behind is very reminiscent of candle or torchlight, and I really like it. Now, I'm being a bit lackadaisical about this and just using a very small brush. What I should be doing is slapping this over the entire area of the flat surfaces, and it really gives a nice warm punch to the light. Either way, I'm happy with the way that the model turned out in this particular instance. I let it dry, and yeah, it's a very nice effect. I highly recommend it. So I've got two types of sponge, two types of moss effects that I want to add to this. This is a gaming Scenics sponge, very nice. Add it with a bit of PVA, and it's very good for the scale of what it is. But I don't end up adding reindeer moss. Now, you have to excuse me, I haven't done a video for about 7 months now, and this footage is actually quite old, and I have done several things on my HeroQuest project since. So yeah, I'm just sticking in the sponge that I have, and then what I'll do is I'll come back with some more of the dirty down moss and add that in and around the areas just to try and blend it in. I'll even put it on the sponge, because as you can see, the sponge is quite a bit brighter than what's there. Now don't worry also if you have any of the PVA glue or modelling glue exposed in the area, that will produce a shiny surface, which obviously we're trying to achieve that anyway. It's a damp dungeon, damp dark dungeon. So here's the finished thing on a rotating table that was kindly given to me as a gift by my friend Mike. Thanks very much, Mike, appreciate that. It's certainly come in handy for displaying things. Now you can see it's on a bit of a kilter. I'm not entirely sure what's happened there with the way I've cut things. I'm pretty sure the turntable is flat because the wall looks vertical there, but when it comes around the corner it's leaning over, so I'm not 100% sure what's going on. Anyway, here it is with the heroes, all ready to go into the dungeon. So I got lots planned for the HeroQuest board. I hope you can join me on the journey. I'll be making a video about that soon. I've actually got a lot of videos lined up, but just because of personal reasons we haven't been able to get around to them. If you like what you saw, please like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks guys.